You take it away. I'm going to go ahead and just let people in as they come. All right. Judy, if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Sorry, I'm not used to doing these anymore. I used to be on camera a lot more. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Surviving and Thriving the High School Years. My name is Gigi Belen, and I am part of the community of concern. And when we thought of putting this together with Jocelyn, we just talked about all the different things that happen at each year of high school. I have a daughter who is now in college, but like all the different demands and challenges and the highs and lows. And we thought it'd be great to share with everyone so that, you know, everyone knows that you're not just in it by yourself. Like everyone is sort of going through the same thing, and also hear about all the supports that our wonderful school gives them. So the Community of Concern is a joint PTO committee of West Hartford Public Middle and High Schools. So we are a parent-led group, and our mission is to raise awareness and educate our school communities about issues that impact adolescent health and well-being with an equity and inclusive lens. So we have another member, Becky, who's going to introduce our panelists today.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Becky Monday. I get the honor of introducing everybody. I'm going to start with Miss Katie Bond. This is her first year as a counselor at Hall, but was at KP in Bristol for the last 4 years. And she recently won an award called the Build No Fences Award, which she can tell you all about, or Jocelyn can. Her fun fact about her, she was a varsity swimmer and diver at Conard and is the biggest nerd of her friend group. And she has 3 kids that will all either have gone or will go to Conard. We won't hold it against her. Our next person on the Hall side is Sarah Isaacs, the principal over there. She has worked for the last 19 years of all levels, middle school and 9th grade English. She was an AP at Hall for 6 years prior to taking the role of principal. She's also a parent to 3 kids, a 4th grader and twin daughters in preschool. And she attended a very small regional school of about 400 kids total, where her dad worked at the school as an agricultural teacher, which means she didn't get away with anything. We've got Miss Patty Pyers, who's the supervisor of secondary counseling, spends most of your time at Conard, correct? Yes, I think so. Yes, okay. Patty's been in the field of education for 25 years, master's degree in educational and school counseling, as well as educational leadership. She began as an English teacher, then went on to be a high school counselor and a K-12 counselor. Her fun fact is she's a proud graduate of New Britain High School, where she was the captain of the Canettes as part of the renowned Golden Hurricane Marching Band. Maybe she'll play something for us or do something for us later. And last but not least is Jocelyn Tamburello Noble, the principal at Conard. She's been a principal for 3 years at Conard. She was a three years before that as the assistant principal, and the 3 years before that as the district supervisor of language. She has a current senior at Conard and a second older child in college. Fun fact was she was the president of the Chinese club in high school, and she uses her Chinese skills to negotiate for fancy bags and jewelry in Chinatown if anyone's ever looking for a bargain. So I am going to turn it over to Jocelyn and Sarah to get us off and running.
Hi, welcome everyone. We're so excited to host these events with Community of Concern, and just speaking about some of the progressions that you may see from your child freshman to senior year. So we're going to start off talking a little bit about freshman year. I apologize, I have a senior and we just finished college applications, so that's been on my mind. So freshman year, some of the things that we might see, and my colleague Sarah Isaacs and I will kind of co-collaborate on this piece here. So one of the things that we see freshman year is really an adjustment to identity. It's a huge part as they come into freshman year. They look at, students kind of look at how do they kind of blend into the high school and who are they in a high school group. They've been with one group of students and now you have classes across the board. Some of them are just for freshmen, but some of them are also mixed classes. So it's how do they adjust and who do they become in this new environment? So those are some of the parts that we definitely see freshman year. So with that comes some organization and responsibility that now you're juggling more academic classes, you're juggling a bigger responsibility, the balance of schoolwork and the balance of also a sport that meets every day or a club or all of these different opportunities to get involved. But it's about how students balance that with their kind of ever evolving freshman identity.
And just to add on to what Jocelyn was talking about, we really see this as a time, and as someone who's seen that 8th grade to 9th grade transition as both a teacher and now as an administrator, it's a big year for peer influence and kind of testing out new friendships. Students we see can be very, highly influenced by peers and kind of figuring out their social belonging. Friendships can shift really frequently. And I'm sure Jocelyn, you and I, a lot of times I joke like against our will, know what's going on in every peer group. And their motivation, I think there's pieces where it goes up and it goes down. Like it's very exciting, but then there's also anxiety about performance. What do these grades mean for me in the long run? And also that exposure to a new structure as far as you're not on a team anymore. You have different adults that you have to navigate throughout the day and their expectations. You also have, whether it's midterms or finals, kind of these larger cumulative tests that might not have happened before. And then you're also getting used to, like I said, numerous adults throughout your day that you're adjusting to, because the school is just, it's larger and there's a lot of adults that are part of your team. And I think students work really hard to figure out who that team really is and who they feel really comfortable with. And it's really, I think, fantastic to watch where students find those adults that are really their champions. I think there's a great opportunity when you get to Hall or Conard where the adults just aren't the ones in your classroom, but it might be your coach, or it might be your band director, or it might be the club supervisor. So there's lots of different opportunities to perform those or to develop those adult relationships and find those people that are going to be part of your team. And I think now we're going to turn it over to Katie and Patty to talk about the counseling interventions for all students in grade 9.
Yeah, so what's wonderful about our programming at West Hartford is that our school counseling anticipates these shifts in students and the transitions that they go throughout these next 4 years of their life. And so we've got 2 things in place for them. We basically have programming that's anticipating what are their needs. So we've got exhaustive programming set up for them, but then we also have reactive programming so that when something happens, there's a counselor that's available to address those needs. So And that goes 9 through 12. So I'm going to mention that first, and then we'll go into the nitty gritty of each particular year. But grades 9 through 12, just so that you know that our counselors have just an open door policy, and we have an on-call model that whenever a student needs to see a counselor, there is a counselor that's available for them. 99% of the time, that's going to be their counselor, because the counselor is going to make themselves available when the student needs them. Should the counselor for some reason not be available, there will be another counselor that steps in to support them. So there's always someone who's going to be there when your student needs something. But we also have academic improvement plans for students. So counselors are always looking at students' grades, they're looking at their behaviors, they're looking at their attendance. And as they monitor that, when they see something of concern, they're going to put some plans in place with the student's team, which would mean other counselors, which would be teachers, would be administration, who are the people that are available to support the student. Then you'll also see that parents will also be invited to be part of that team as well. So if things rise to the higher concern, where we do need to put more strategic plans in place, you'll see that there is a team that's pulled together to make those plans. So regardless of the grade level, your students don't fall through the cracks. We are always looking at data. We're always looking at what's going on to make sure that we can put in individualized plans to address those needs. That being said, though, as we mentioned already, in grade 9, we know there's particular things that students are going to go through. So we do have programming to address those needs. So Katie, I'm going to turn it over to you, because one of the things that we do is we understand that freshman year is such an important year that we have specific counselors for freshmen. So each freshman will get, depending on their alphabet, they'll have 1 or 2 counselors who will really pull them through that freshman year, make sure that their transition to high school is successful. So Katie, if you want to talk about the programming we have in place. And you're on mute right now.
Thank you. My name's Katie, and I am the first half of the alphabet at Hall, but I'm one half of a whole. Ashley Carlson covers the other half, and we manage most of what we do in a team. So to start freshman year, almost immediately, we're in the classroom with our freshmen. We meet throughout the first semester. Freshman seminar is actually in their schedule so that they know that they have our undivided attention multiple times throughout the first semester. It starts heavy. We're in there often. We will do like a getting to know you for kids. This one was easy for me this year because I did travel up with this year's 8th graders. But our lessons will include things like your student skills, so organization, self-advocacy. We show the kids how to get involved, whether it's athletics, community service, it could be clubs, study habits, goal setting, career exploration, and post-secondary exploration. An example is this week, freshmen all get to take the PSATs, and this week we're learning how to access our scores and the resources that come along with having gone through your first set of SAT testing. On top of our lessons, we also have individual meetings, which are getting to know you. Sometimes this is us going up to the freshman seminar in the classroom and pulling kids for quick check-ins in the hallways. Sometimes it is us having a little bit more individual time in our offices. But by the time we get to Thanksgiving, I can tell you from personal experience, the kids are almost sick of us because they have now had all the support. They're ready for us to take the training wheels off. And that's about the time where they transition to a study hall. At that point, they all still have full access to us, but they've learned certain skills like how to email us to ask for support when they need it and how to find us. So at the end of freshman year, we have collected and learned all of your children. We tie them up into a little bow and we hand them off to their 10 to 12 counselor, having the ability to tell them what their transition to high school has looked like so that they can continue to be supported as they transition through the rest of their high school career.
Great. Thanks, Katie. So we're going to talk a little bit about sophomore year. As we're going through this, just think about some questions that you have in mind. So we start seeing sophomore year kind of a growing independence that happens for our students. They're making decisions. You're going to see some risk taking here. This is where sometimes we see a shift in friend groups. Whoever they came in with freshmen, sometimes they shift a little bit. You see definitely some confidence building in terms of classes. They have a full year underneath them. They kind of know, the ropes. They're not the youngest ones in school anymore. But they go through and they start kind of thinking about some future goals. So we see that in sophomore year. And when we're talking about risk taking, this is when we start seeing, as parents and caregivers, this is a little bit of a pushback of when you're reminding them about studying, or you're asking them how their tests went. It's very natural. They're going to be pushing back and be like, I already have a system. I already know what I'm doing. I already take notes, or here's this piece, or I don't need you to have my Google Classroom code, or I don't need you to check my grades in Power School all the time. I got it. So you start kind of hearing that as parents and caregivers at home. So that's kind of what we see. We also start seeing some of the beginning conversations about college, career, a trade, whatever options there are, and they're starting to kind of think about. You're starting to kind of see glimmers of that in sophomore year. This is also the piece where you might have to also set some boundaries with some social media pieces, and also how often they're online and kind of how they're interacting on the weekends. And so this is the time to start really having conversations about what the friends look like, and what healthy friendships look like, and what going out looks like, and really how do we talk about healthy boundaries? So these are some great things for sophomore year.
And I'll just add to that, when I think sometimes in sophomore year, as much as your children they start to look older, they start to look bigger. I think all the foundations you've built as parents, and all the boundaries that you've set, and all the supports that you give, you really see start to pay off, because they seem like these big people, but they're still children. They still need you. They might not tell you in the ways that they have told you before. And that I see parents say, like, oh, they have to figure it out themselves, which absolutely, it's really about this gradual release of responsibility. But I would say, and I'm sure Jocelyn would second, that you should still be checking with them. You should still be holding those boundaries, that they still need you very, very much. And that all those little things you do and parents do to show how much you care about them really, really matters. There's still that little kid at the concert, like, looking for you to be there. They're still at their basketball games, at their club, bake sales, like that your presence is really meaningful. And that they really benefit from that. Because again, the second what Jocelyn said, that this is really a time where you see some pushing of boundaries. They're older now, and like all those, I would say, like, their decisions start to make their way into like adult decisions, because they might have a friend that drives. They might, have be faced with different situations, and all your coaching that's when it's really paying off. And you have an incredible team of adults at Hall and at Conard that are there to support you in the team that is wrapped around your child, to make sure that they can have their most successful high school career. So make sure that you're using us in any way that you can to keep that support. And now I'll turn it back over to counseling.
Thank you. And so what's nice is that all through freshman year is that our students have built a fabulous relationship with their freshman year counselors. So those counselors although they now have a new set of freshmen they're working with, they're always available as a support for those students. However, at the beginning of the sophomore year, that's when the counselors then meet, or the students meet their 10 through 12 counselor, grades 10 through 12. So right off the bat, the counselors are meeting with the students, starting to build those relationships with them. They've already met with actually the 9th grade counselor. I should have said this first. They've met with the 9th grade counselor to review the student, to know what their needs are, what their interests are, things that they should be aware of, so that the 10th grade counselor is there providing right off the bat the supports that students need. But then we start off with meeting with the students, so that we start developing that relationship. because as students are going through all these things that you're hearing about, the counselors want to make sure the students know that their counselor is there to support them. Because a lot of times now, and I'm sure you get it, and I've got kids in high school too, that, they come home from school and it's like, well, what did you do today? Well, nothing. Okay, well, that's great. You had to have done something. And sometimes because they're not sharing as much with their family, they need to have that person in school that they can share with. It's sometimes easier to talk with their counselor than it is with the family, because it's sort of someone that's removed from the situations, and they can be a little bit more objective. They can sometimes say things that if you were to say it as a parent, you'd get your head bitten off, but from the counselor, they take it a little bit better because, as you know, when you get in high school, you guys don't know anything anymore, but somehow the counselor is able to say some of those things. So relationship development is a huge part of sophomore year, making sure that the counselors are there for the students and the students know that they're there for them. Going along with what was also said too, we understand that as sophomores, it's time to really starting to take a deeper look into who they are and what their interests are, and how those interests and their talents connect to what are they going to be doing after they graduate from high school. So what are the careers that are out there that match their personality style, their interests? So we take them through a series of lessons. It's not as intense as the freshman seminar. We only get them for a few days. But during those days, we do talk to them about taking a deep look at themselves and what are the things that make them happy, what are their values, what is their personality style. That's going to give them the kind of life that they want to live in the future. So they do interest inventories, and when they do those inventories, then have the opportunity to research careers that match the things that they've put in that they have said are important to them. So we do a lot of stuff with that. We start getting them thinking about then, okay, this is the career I'm interested in. How do I get there? Does that mean I need to go to a 2-year school, to a technical school, to a 4-year school? If it's a 4-year school, how big of a school is it? Is it somewhere in state? Is it somewhere out of state? All of the things that go along with making that kind of a decision. They start thinking about those things and how they relate to who they are as individuals. So we do the same kind of things with the getting to know you meetings. We do the goal setting. And then, as always, knowing then what it is they think they want to do, we sit down with them individually and talk about their courses and what it is that they could continue to be doing, getting involved, internships, job shadowing. What are the things that are out there that'll help connect them to those next steps of what they're thinking about doing once they graduate? Because even though they're just their second year in high school, the rest of those years just fly by. So it's important to start thinking about those things right away. Katie, did you want to add anything about sophomore year?
I'm gonna just echo what everyone else has already said, because I came up from KP. So many of the kids who got up to Hall before me got super excited, and I like everything that both of the principals talked about are things that kids came to me to talk to me about. And this is one of those places where it is really nice that ninth grade counselor transitioning to 10th grade is the beauty of both of the teams. Now that I'm up at the high school, I can tell you just from being in meetings, the collaboration and community that's built through the counselors is something that's truly amazing.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Katie and Patty. So thinking about junior year is very interesting because this is when we start seeing some future orientation. So we see an increase in college, career, post-secondary plans. The conversations become a little bit more intense, where students may come home and say like, I don't know what I want to do when they start having conversations with other students. And part of being a parent caregiver is to say like, it's okay if you don't know right now. Let's talk about what some things you're interested in. It's also, people talk about junior year, and it's junior year has been a thing since I was in high school, where they always talk about junior year being so hard and so challenging. One of the biggest conversations we had in our home was really about how you balance your schedule and how you choose things that still allow for you to have a healthy, we talk about work-life balance, we talk about school life balance in our home. Just because you were recommended for AP courses doesn't mean you need to take AP courses. And that's part of the conversation. We see a balancing of workload and pressure and activities. And we also start seeing a development of self-identity into adulthood. So developmentally, we start seeing more of the adult pieces come out here. This is the independence where if they aren't driving at this point, they have a lot of friends who are driving. There's a lot of social activities, either connected to school or outside of school. And these are some conversations where we talk about boundaries in terms of consumption of, we talk about making sure that they understand things like drug, alcohol, any of those pieces when they're being offered. What are the pieces and the talking points of being able to decline and being able to have those conversations? It's about having difficult conversations with their friends in junior year. And then we see independence in terms of responsibility of how, sometimes students at this point have a job or are working and balancing school. So what are all those pieces there? Sarah, other pieces that may be missed?
Just to echo it, I really see, and I know Jocelyn and I have spoken about it, that, freshman and sophomore year are really something onto itself. And then juniors and seniors are kind of a different type of teenager. And so I think that there's a huge jump that summer between the sophomore and junior year for students as far as maturity. I think it's really important that to acknowledge that their friendship groups might kind of shift at this point. They've really defined for themselves what high school is going to be. And you start to see that junior year that they start to take on those leadership roles in those clubs and those sports and in music, in the play, like in all those different spaces. All of a sudden, they're not just part of it. They're taking on the leadership side and they're now leading other students. So I think that can increase some pressure pieces about junior year. I would also say that, again, like, you have driving, they might have a job for the first time. Jocelyn hit the nail on the head with the balance of their plate, right? Like, what are they interested in? What benefits them? What kind of pressure are they feeling? And then, just because everyone else is taking this AP, is that what you want? If it really is, then let's talk about, let's make sure you have a lunch. Let's make sure that you're maybe working isn't a great idea for you right now. I would say the spring of junior year it's a lot. You have, they're thinking about becoming captains the next year. They're thinking about the SAT. They're thinking about the science testing. They're thinking about all the, if they're taking more than one, they're thinking about those tests. They have the prom. So there's all these social dynamics going on as well. So if you have a junior parent, or you want to mark it now on your calendar, that May of junior year, March, April, May is a lot, and to recognize that, and to just let them know that you're that safe space for them is so essential. All right, I'll turn it back over to Patty.
Thank you. And you mentioned some really important things, and I'm glad you said that, because one of the big conversations that counselors do have with students as juniors, and really every year, but is taking a look at that, I'm going to say work-life balance, but what it is that you're doing in school with your overall level of mental health and level of stress, and how many hours a night are you doing homework. What we sometimes say to students is, just because you're recommended for every AP class, just because you can do, let's say, each of those subject areas, doesn't mean that you necessarily can do it all together or should do it all together. And it takes going back to that, thinking about, what is it that's important to me? Who am I as a person? What is it that I want to accomplish after I graduate from high school? And then being able to stay sane while you're still in high school, and not overstretch yourself to the point where, we deal a lot with, and we've seen, and our data shows that the anxiety level really spikes up for students during junior year, because I think they're seeing, graduation is coming, and they've put all this extra pressure on themselves. They've got more responsibilities. They've got more access to these rigorous courses, and it's a lot, and sometimes too much. And so it's okay to take a step back. And I think a lot of times students feel like less of themselves if they don't do everything. But doing everything in the end burns some kids out. So that is a very important conversation that the counselors do have with students, and have it frequently. So we do those individual meetings where we talk about goal setting, we talk about proper course selection, what overall is the right fit. And the biggest thing that we talk about during junior year is we have what we call is junior workshop, which meets through quarter 3. And that's where students get really intense support on the post-secondary process. And so regardless of what path they're taking, they do lots of, again, self-reflecting on what do I think it is that I want to do, because what they thought they wanted to do freshman year might be different than sophomore year, might be different than junior year. And especially as they take different classes, they may say, hey, I thought this was a good fit for me, but now I'm seeing, oh, maybe this isn't a good fit for me. And what we want them to do is not to decide what it is, like this is definitely it for me, but to talk about options. And when other things come across their plate, we want them to have the tools and the resources to be able to investigate those options so that they know whether or not a particular career or a particular college might be a good fit for themselves. So we do a lot during that quarter 3. They meet every week with their counselor in a classroom setting. They talk about different pathways for post-secondary. They talk about exploring finding those right fit options. And then we talk about the nitty gritty of like resume writing and how to complete an application, whether it's a 2-year, 4-year job application, and then key components of the application process, such as letters of recommendation, standardized testing, all these little pieces that can get very overwhelming. And so another part that we do talk about junior year is we go back to talking about organizational tools and how do you keep everything set for yourself so that you don't get overwhelmed through all of that. So again, yeah, junior year, very, very important for everybody and all levels. And the support for the students ramps up even more with the counseling. Katie, did you want to add anything to that?
I think the thing that strikes me just as you're saying all of that is we've already had one of us say they're starting to look so much like grown-ups. And now the things that you're listing are such grown-up things. And they're all so worried also about being cool all day. And so the 2 places where they have a really hard time being cool is with their counselors or if they have a clinician, and then at home. So just know that if you have an 11th grader and they're melting down, that's normal, because they're working so hard to be on it all day, and they literally feel like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders.
Great, thank you, Katie.
Yes, I couldn't have said that any better. And I think that's one of my favorite things that's to talk about is the students that, because they feel safe with you at home, they do just unload on you. And then they go off to their room and you're perseverating on like, oh my gosh, my poor kid, what am I going to do? How am I going to help this? And then they come back a half an hour later and they're perfectly fine. And meanwhile, you're like pulling your hair out because you're thinking that the world is ending. But what really has happened is you just provided for them what they needed. And that was you were there to listen, you were there to support them. And now they feel like, okay, I can move on with this. So I thank you for bringing that up, Katie.
So now we go into senior year where we see kind of a spectrum of a variety of different things happening here. One of the things that we definitely see is we see a little bit of stress at the beginning of the year, especially when it comes to thinking about the college process, college applications, the deadlines around that. Also, if students are applying for apprenticeships or internships or looking at the trades, if students are trying to make the decision of going into the armed forces. So any of the paths that we offer is really being able to kind of have students make those decisions senior year, especially. For those of you who have gone through the college process, it is a process that, and I'm going to have, obviously Patty and Katie are going to talk about the supports that are provided, which are amazing. But also the fact that there's a lot of indecision and support that you're providing as a parent and caregiver at home. And then the fact that preparing for their independence. They are preparing for their next steps, and they want to make sure they let you know that they're ready for college at times. I think Gigi said it best when she talked about the aspect of sometimes you see a piece called spoiling the nest a little bit, which is when they start telling you that they're like good to go and they don't need you. So that happens. Or the extreme of like, I want to be right next to you every minute. So you're going to see both of those things developmentally. And I can tell you as a mom of a senior, I've seen both this year. But it's really, you know, the school is a great resource to be able to say, here's some things I need support with. What are some things that are offered? And being able to also understand that they are going through this period where they're really preparing themselves and you for adulthood. And so when, you know, somebody who has a sophomore in college, I can tell you this happened with both of my kids in different ways. But I will also tell you that it's really wonderful when you see them be independent and really connected at the same time. So, you know, as a parent and caregiver, if we do our jobs well, I think Katie says this really well. If we do our jobs well, our kids are independent and they don't, you know, they need you, but they also are comfortable making decisions and have efficacy as they move forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to add some other pieces.
No, I mean, I think that's those, I would say for senior year, that's the most important piece is that, you know, you've spent this entire childhood, you know, preparing your student to be, or preparing your child to be completely independent. And I think it's like kind of a really long breakup almost that can be really hard. And I say that as someone who's watched I can't tell you the number of parents that I've had to call in May, at the end of May, and be like, your child just skipped class and went to Lock Stock. And I don't know, Jocelyn, if it's Goldberg's over at Conard or whatever. And they're like, my child would never do that. And I'm like, it's totally normal. They're pushing a boundary. They're doing something that makes them feel independent. They're kind of doing that wreck the nest to leave the nest, that piece. And we see that really often. But I think the entire time that you've listened to them when it's small. And so now they know you're going to listen when it's big. And you've moved into that coaching space where they're kind of coming to you with their things. You're letting them come to you, and they're able to tell you what they need. Now they don't necessarily like need you, but they want to be around you. And that's the greatest gift in the end of, I think, parenting, is that you want your child to want to be around you, right? And it's a long journey. I think senior year starts pretty busy and stressful, and it's a lot for all of you as well as parents to navigate that college process, or whether they're deciding to go into the military and navigating what does that look like, or if they're looking for internships and how is that going to all play out. And they really, for the first time, are looking at, you know, they've gone to kindergarten, then you go to first grade, then you go to second grade, like their path has been really clear. And for the first time, there's so many options for them. And that's wonderful. It can also be really scary. And having that strong home support and having that strong team support, it's really amazing when we watch them walk across that stage. And I think even though there are things that are really, really difficult about parenting teenagers, there's so much that is amazing about parenting teenagers and getting to teach and work with teenagers every day. One of my favorite things to see in September is we have a long hallway where they come in off the bus. And I love to see like that first day where there's this brand new 9th grader, and then behind them is like walking in a senior, and to just see that there's so much growth and so much change in those 4 years. That always reminds me of how amazing that this grade level is. So it's a lot, and it's a lot to navigate. And I think as parents to take in, but it's fantastic. And our greatest gift is to watch them walk across that stage. And we know that they're ready to go out and be amazing. All right, I'll turn it over to Patty.
Thank you. And I think the big theme for us when we're working with students in senior year really is decision making, because we've been doing so much exploration throughout grades 9, 10, and 11, and we've put all the pieces in place that now it's kind of time to see how all of your efforts are paying off for you. One of the things that the counselors always emphasize is to keep all your options open, because even starting senior year, you figure 10 months down the road is still a very long time in the lives of these students, that by the time they graduate, some of their interests may have changed even at that point. So we always want students to keep all their options open, knowing that when the time comes to make a decision, they're not going to say, oh, if only I had, or I wish I had done, or I wasn't prepared for. So we want to make sure that the counselors are working with the students to make sure that those options are open. The counselors meet with the seniors in senior workshop all of Q1. So right off the bat, again, we're welcoming our seniors back and we're saying, hey, we're here to help you through this huge decision-making time. And most of our students are going to be going to a 4-year school. And for most of them, that means they're going to need to get all their applications done really by November 1st for a lot of them, because that's an early application deadline, and that's become almost like the new deadline. Even though it's early, it really is what pretty much everyone is shooting for. So it's a lot to do right off the bat. And we find that the relationship building that's gone with the counselors and the students throughout the years is really, you see the value of it by senior year, because the students are down with their counselors all the time. Hey, can you help me with this? Hey, can you look at that? And the counselors are there to help them through the whole thing. So they do have the senior workshop where, again, they go through all the nitty gritty, making sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed for whatever it is that they're planning. They have the individual meetings with the students to make sure that whatever their goals are, that they've got the tools that they need and the resources they need to find success. This year we talk more about financial aid and scholarships, so that you can try and support themselves to some degree with whatever it is they're going to be doing after they graduate. And then they also have this open drop-in time where the counselors are just made available one day each week, every period of the day, where a student can just show up and say, hey, I need some help. And a counselor says, I'm here, come on in. So you will be thrilled to see all the interventions and supports that are in place to guide the students. You'll see then they do have individual meetings again at the end of the year, because that's where the decision time is coming. Usually by May 1st, students have to commit to what it is they want to do after they graduate. And so the counselors are there again to say, hey, come meet with me. Let me make sure you have what it is that you need. Let me answer any more questions that you have, so that this next transition, which is also scary and fun and exciting and stressful, that their counselor is still there to help them to hopefully, hand them off as softly as possible to whatever their next goal is. Katie, anything else?
No, I think that just about sums it up. I think the beauty of our department is before we even come in for our summer days towards the beginning of the school year, each senior already has their first individual scheduled, because the counselors in tandem with that are in the classroom with the sophomores and the juniors. And the drop-in, it's kind of amazing because we are at that height right now. So from November 1st all the way up until now, if you walk into the counseling offices just before school until well after the bell rings, there are kids cycling in and out of the office. And there's just so many counselors there to catch them. So if their counselor is otherwise engaged, they feel comfortable with everybody, because there's just the drop-in model allows them to build a relationship with everybody on the team. And the mess and nest thing is like a legit thing. So you almost are glad that they're gone. But what Jocelyn is saying, when my first left, I called her crying and said, I feel like I just got punished for doing a good job.
And that's the hardest part when the kids go off. But we're also very proud as parents for that to happen. The counseling department is an amazing partner for you. And as parents and caregivers are going through each stage, there's definitely programming and supports at each level. And so we're really excited to have the counseling department that we have in West Hartford Public Schools, because not only are they supporting the career piece, the armed forces or apprenticeships or internships, but truly they're the first tier in terms of mental health, in terms of other supports, in terms of teaming at the high school level. So we're super fortunate. At this point, we'd like to open it up to some questions. If folks have questions, feel free to raise your hand with the hand bar or feel free to put some in the chat box.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I swear, as you were going through all of high school, I literally went through the ups and downs. I was going to cry by the end of senior year because I was like, oh my gosh, that's right. Like we did it. You know, it's like I remember them as like, you know, they're so little in my head. They're little entering high school for freshman year and then like all the new things. And then really it's true, like junior year, they start taking more ownership over everything and they become like leaders in their schools, which is really great to see. So thank you for all the different parts, for sharing about, you know, the counseling supports at every level. I think that's been really also hugely helpful to know. I know that there are really comprehensive websites also at each for Conard and for Hall that shows like all the different ways that the counselors do support our kids in school too. If you have any more questions, of course, reach out, but like those websites are super helpful and we have them in the slides also. We do have some questions that people put in to the registration. Becky, did you want to share some of them?
Yeah, I think actually one just came in on the chat and I had the same question. As 10th through 12th grade caregivers, how do they know who their counselors are for their kids? I know who it was for freshman year because it was alphabetical, but is there communication from counselors? Are they reaching out to caregivers, newsletters, things like that? How does that get established?
Yes, it is also alphabetical. And so and all of that is on the website. So if you, for some reason, don't get a communication, which you will, but if you say, oh, I don't know, it's right on the website. And so if you know your last name now, you can generally look on the website now to predict who your kid's counselor would be in the future. But yes, there will be communication in pretty much every newsletter that goes home. There's a breakdown of this is who the counselor is. And if ever there's a question, just give the office a call and we can connect you with the counselor.
Okay, great. There was questions about drug situations within the school. Have you guys been hearing about this? What is kind of, and across both schools, from the parent side of the concerns, where do you guys see it standing, vaping as well as other drugs?
So there's a lot. We just had the benefit of having Laura Stack come and do a presentation about THC. You know, one of the things that we really look at is preventative measures and support measures for students. There is usage at the high school level. One of the things that happens is really the fact that with this growing independence also comes this other accessibility. So we have a lot of programs in schools where we have a drug and alcohol program where students need support. We also use a lot of our anonymous alert system where if students see something, they can report something. Things do get reported there all the time, in terms of just anything from I need help to my friend needs support to I saw someone vaping in a bathroom. So really, there's a lot of work that we do. Sarah and I talk often about, we both have visibility plans at the high schools. We walk through bathrooms. We look through hallways. One of the things that we also do is make sure that students are getting the appropriate supports when they are using. Sometimes, I will say that the parental and parent caregiver attitude about drugs, alcohol, or anything, it's an important conversation to start early about what you allow, what you permit. And also, if your child is going out on the weekends, it's not really too early to start having some of those conversations in middle school. There's a lot of accessibility, to different things. And it's just important for people to understand that, like, your child needs the support to understand where they should be, or even environments on the weekends or even after hours where, if they're not comfortable with something, how they communicate that as well.
Yeah, I would just second that. I'm in, and I know Jocelyn is in more bathrooms than we can count in a day. We have our teachers, we have our security. We feel that like the adult presence is actually the most important piece, as far as making sure students feel safe. And our student faculty committee students have given that feedback that they actually like us in and out of bathrooms a lot because they feel that our presence has really improved. that piece. We're definitely dealing with something that, I didn't go to high school with, and, a vape, THC or nicotine, just really arming yourself with a really clear understanding. Laura Stack just did a fantastic, like Jocelyn said, presentation at both schools. And I was sitting there and she's telling us about the science of it. And I'm like, oh my God. It really, really was so interesting. So I would, just use any resource you can. And then also, again, helping your kid prep for when they're in that situation where someone offers them something or, seems under the influence to get in a car. Like, what are all the things we can do? We just had West Hartford police come in and they talked to all of our wellness classes, and they talked about that you could actually text 911. So if you're in a car with an unsafe driver, you could text 911 and it pings and they can tell what car you're in. And you can even say, like, don't say I reported it. And so there's all these different avenues for your child if they find themselves in a difficult situation. I think prepping before they're actually in it is really the most important defense. And gift you can give them. And, and then I think also too, like when they make those mistakes, like teenagers are going to make mistakes, that you're still that safe space to talk to them and help them get the support they need. And that's just, like what we need to do to keep our kids safe, because they have so many avenues where they can access, and that's not going to stop at the high school level. So that's what I would say is one of the most important pieces you can do as a parent.
So I just wanted to jump in and say, at least for counseling, it's a full wraparound support. So I also serve on West Hartford's Prevention Council, and the first thing is always getting connected to your community. So when the freshman counselors go in, we work with all of the kids and getting connected to their community, because being busy with the good stuff gives you way less time for the less attractive stuff. And it also gives you the motivation. If you get wrapped up in something like that, you actually hinder your chances of remaining a participating member of things that you're in. However, in the event that it does happen, I've gotten now this early in the school year to like watch so much. So you might land with your assistant principal, but it's still such a caring catch where they're with you in the process of what happened, listening to what happened. Both high schools have a drug, alcohol, and tobacco program that is very organized, where everyone has a role to play. And the counselors will spend time reflecting with the student about what kind of led up to some decision making and how it impacted themselves and the people around them, and how to move better and in a better way that brings them more successfully to their goals. But I think the thing that, as a child of the 80s, the thing that has landed with me is it's very serious, but it's all learning. Because as we've said more than once, we're talking about, kids in adult bodies feeling ready to do adult things, and really it's about them learning what's going on. And I know I've already heard from several kids at Hall this year that places that seemed less ideal, like the bathrooms, no longer are an issue. Kids feel a lot more comfortable in all places in the school. And I think Principal Isaacs is right. It's just because the grown-ups are everywhere, and they're everywhere saying hi, asking how the kids are doing, making them feel like they're part of a school community. And that leads them to be more comfortable, the kids, with reporting things that they do see.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. There was a question about digital technology use. This isn't a new topic. It's something that continues to float around, and Community of Concern is showing Screenagers movie this Thursday at Hall for everyone to come join us. From your perspectives, what are the high schools doing to not support the addiction that is happening with our teens?
Well, we're working really hard on it. I think, Jocelyn and I last year implemented the off and away policy, which was actually in our handbooks as written, that phones in the classroom need to be off, turned off, silenced, do not disturb, and away from your body. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces, that it's not in your pocket buzzing, that it's in your backpack, And then I know Jocelyn and I have done, and our admin teams and our teachers have, and our counselors have really committed to holding those lines in classrooms. And I've had teachers come up to me last year and again this year and just saying, I'm getting through my curriculum so fast, or the grades on this assignment are higher than they've ever been. And I don't think I think it's because of there's just the ability to not have that back and forth with someone, that there isn't that distractor on their desk. I don't know if you know this, but anytime a student's caught with their phone, it's always because their mom's texting them. It's never a social thing. And, we've really worked hard to hold the line, and we appreciate the parent support. If you get caught with your cell phone, you're going to get a lunch detention. And to us, like, we're just going to tell you, and really with all of our pieces is there's safety in being clear and kind, right? In that when we say this is a boundary, we're going to hold it. And a lunch detention, it's not going on a transcript. It's not, like, no one will ever see it, but we appreciate the parents that have partnered with us and say, nope, you're going to miss out on kind of your fun lunch, because we need to make sure that you understand that this is our boundary. Now, I think there's the other side of it too, that we've worked really hard to do, is if we're going to tell them that screens are not that they need to think about their screen addiction, which I think a lot of them are talking about also, is that we needed to give them something else to do. So, we've really invested in our cafeterias. We've invested in our outdoor space. We've added games, ping pong. We have 2 outdoor ping pong tables. They were using it today. I looked outside. I'm like, it's freezing. But, there's like 12 kids around the ping pong tables. We have games in the cafeteria. I see they have taco, cat, goat cheese pizza out all the time, Connect 4. So we're coming from it from 2 ways of like, we're setting a boundary and we're going to hold that space for you because we know we need to do this for you. But we're also saying, on the flip side of that, we want to give you really great ways and healthy ways to interact socially, so that you can also monitor that usage when there's space. And I think we've talked to our teachers a lot too about really being thoughtful about Chromebook use, like how many screens are they on in a day? Because it's not just their phone, it's their Chromebook. We're looking at our math our math departments are working on building thinking classrooms where they're up and they're writing and they're on these whiteboards and they're working in groups. So we're thinking about it from all different angles, and it's going to take time. But I think the community support, and what I hear as a elementary school parent up, is that there's a lot of parents that are shoulder to shoulder on this, but then also feeling empowered enough to say, this is our family's path, and this is the path we're going to go as a family. And I'll tell you, my 4th grader, he's so funny, because I've come home many times and been like, you're never going on the internet. And if you ask him when he gets social media, he's like, don't worry, Mom, I know it's crazy out there. So they are listening. You just have to keep going. But I think it's really hard too, when we didn't know all the stuff we know in the past 2 years ago. So it's also being forgiving of yourself and giving grace of yourself. Like, you didn't know what you didn't know. And I think that's not really brought up enough. And then as families, just now, what do we do? Are we going to talk about it? Are we going to set some boundaries as a family? Are we going to model for our kids? What are we going to do now that we know more, we can do more?
Well said.
Sarah, you said it so nicely. One of the pieces I just want to add to that is, and I see that Jonathan is on this call. So we are, Mr. Duarte, our assistant superintendent for administration, is going to be doing a district committee for, digital use and technology and all of those different pieces. So last year, Sarah and I worked on bringing Zach Rauch to Hall to really have this conversation. The next book that's coming out is really about the magnificent generation. It really talks about the 4th and 5th grade focus. At the high school level, we see kids balancing. There's a lot of perception that kids are in their phones all day in the cafeteria. They're not. Like Sarah said, we've invested in a variety of different things that kids are really talking to each other. They're interactive. We had a group of about 30 outside playing football all period during lunch, and I was so impressed, but it was freezing out. So we have all these different things where kids are doing that. I think at the high school level, the off and away policy allows for them to really focus on instructional time, while at the same time learning the balance. They're going we have students who are going to college in a couple of years that we want to be able to have them learn, how do you balance your social pieces? How do you balance, your school pieces, and still understand that you may have a phone with you? So we're looking at it differently at the high school level. Our off and away policy we received Really great feedback. And one of the things I'll share is, Sarah has Titan Talks. I have done discussions where students can drop in. At the beginning, when we really enforced the current policy of off and away, students at the beginning, I had like droves of 30 telling me that why can't kids have their cell phones and they need to have it all the time, and their mom is going to text them and their mom's going to get worried, and it's always the mom. But one of the things that has come up is at the end of the year, the same students came and they're like, I now know what it feels like to be super focused and learn one thing at a time without anything else. And I know what it's like to shut off kids are shutting off notifications. Their phone is not dinging all the time. And those are the things that we're seeing is kind of this positive progress in terms of students being able to balance things and understand when they need to also shut off the notifications in their digital media state as well. So those of you who are interested in joining a technology district committee at some point, stay tuned because there will be some information coming out for that as well.
Excellent. Just to finish off, there are a couple of questions that I imagine Patty and Katie, it would be okay if parents contacted their individual counselors to ask questions about sleep and time management, about how to motivate our teens that don't want to listen to us anymore, about managing workload. Lots of really great questions that we won't have time to get to. So is that an okay next step, is we can kind of individually reach out to counselors and ask for advice on raising teenagers? Excellent. Thank you.
Great. And stay tuned because we will also be doing other segments of this. So as we go ahead and plan for our next session, just know we'll be kind of looking at answering other questions as well. So I'm going to have Gigi go ahead and close this out.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise and sharing all that with us. High school really is like a roller coaster, and I'm really appreciative to have you all in our corners helping us out and supporting our students. So we have a feedback form. We would love to hear if you want more of this, because we would love to do it again and talk about more things about our high school kids as they go through things. And don't tell us anything, because that was my kid. This is why I get involved and find out what's going on in schools, because my children don't tell me what's going on. So this is how I find out. And I will send out the slideshow that had a lot of this great information. It also has links to the counseling websites. And if you could give us some feedback, that would be great. But thank you everyone for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Same thing again, because I feel like there's just